Let me share my screen here real quick. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Bates. Here today to present my capstone proposal for my project. Um, so just kind of a brief introduction, and I'll kind of start with the problem that I'm going to solve. It's on the next slide, but that'll kind of fit in with my introduction. So um, the project that I'm trying to solve basically is to help aspiring pilots obtain their dream of flying. It's something that I personally struggled with, and I've talked to a lot of other people that I've worked with as well. There's a lot of people out there that really want to fly, that want to be pilots, but it's a very intimidating and kind of overwhelming process to even get started. It's one of the hardest parts, honestly, is just figuring out how to get started. And so I'm hopeful that with this project, I can help others who are looking to get into this amazing career and just give them kind of some tools and resources to get started. So I've just kind of included some pictures, most of which I've taken myself of my journey, kind of different steps along the way. Just kind of a brief introduction for myself. I was actually going to Boise State in person, and I stopped in 2018 to kind of pursue my dream of flying. I went through kind of a fast track program to get all my certificates and ratings, which I'll talk about here in kind of a minute, briefly, and did that in Utah. And then I instructed, so teaching other people how to fly for about 2 years over in Denver, Colorado, to basically build hours and kind of my resume before I was able to get hired on by an airline. So I started working for Horizon Air, which they fly kind of under the Alaska Airlines banner in August of last year, and I'm based in Boise, Idaho, which is great. So it's kind of a brief introduction of what I do and how I've gotten there. Again, the problem that I'm trying to solve is how I can help aspiring pilots obtain their dream of flying. There's not a lack of information out there, but for people who don't really have any connections in the aviation industry, it can be very tough to figure out what's good information. So this screenshot is actually from the flight school that I went to, and it's kind of a really good overview of their flight training program and the timeline that it takes to get there. So it's very similar with the program that I went through, but it basically just shows you all of the certificates and ratings that they offer, and most of which you need to obtain if you want to have any kind of professional career in aviation. So it starts off obviously with your private pilot license and kind of goes from there to your instrument rating, which allows you to fly in the clouds and fly strictly using the instruments in the airplane. Then to your commercial pilot certificate. So usually you'll get a single engine commercial certificate and then a multi-engine certificate, which is the multi-engine is the big one that you need to fly any kind of big aircraft with several engines. And then most people, including myself, go through and get their certified flight instructor certificates, which allows them to teach other students to fly. Kind of the biggest hurdle for aspiring pilots who want to be professional pilots, fly at the airlines or corporate charter, anything like that, is they usually require quite a bit of time in the airplane before they'll hire you. So I finished, for instance, my program with 250 flight hours. To become an airline pilot, you have to have 1,500 flight hours. And most jobs that fly jets or anything like that require usually at least even 1,000 hours. So that's kind of another big hurdle is, okay, well, how do I get from 250 hours to 1,000, 1,500 plus hours? And flight instructing is a way that most people get there because you can start pretty low time. So that's, again, just kind of another thing that if you don't know anyone in the industry, you might not understand that's something you kind of have to go through and get to get where you want to be. So the stakeholders and audience. So the audience, obviously, this is a college class. The primary audience is going to be my instructors who will watch this, but also anyone that I might be able to share this with in the future that is an aspiring pilot that will hopefully get them started. So the stakeholders for my project, again, are primarily aspiring pilots or people who just want to get into aviation in general, but don't really know how or how to get started or where to look. So the impact that my project makes on them is hopefully just to make the process easier and that they can get started sooner, than they necessarily would have. Like I said, I went to college for 3 years before I kind of finally figured out how to get going and get started. So um, a lot of things in aviation, the sooner you get better or get going, the better. So hopefully it'll just make that process easier for someone who's looking to get into that career field. This picture here is after I passed my private pilot certificate, so I thought that was kind of a fun one to share. It was the first big test that I took, and so again, it's something that is any pilot will never forget for sure. The approach to solving my problem, I'm going to complete a research project, primarily in a document or a paper that provides information and references to aspiring pilots on how to get started. Again, if you Google, you know, how do I become a pilot and stuff, there's good resources out there, but a lot of it isn't necessarily the best or the most accurate. And so hopefully this will be compiled by someone who went through the process and went through it fairly recently. And hopefully that will really resonate and help people who are really trying to get started. And it'll filter out all the other stuff that's really not necessary, but it'll be kind of just a very, black and white. This is what you need to do. This is how you get started. This is how you do it. Including, some tips and pieces and bits of information that I have learned myself along the way that hopefully others will be able to take and learn from. Um, oops. Research. So just a couple takeaways that I've learned just from the research that I've done so far, even just specifically from this project. There's a lot of, like I said, I've already mentioned this, but there's a lot of really good information out there if you know where to look. So I'm going to provide hopefully some good references to some good websites that I've used as well, that will help people to find some really good valuable information. The financial investment is a big factor in making a decision to start flying. It's extremely expensive, and it can be very overwhelming. A lot of places it's 60, 80, $100,000 to do everything. A lot of people see that number and get scared. It's very overwhelming and kind of intimidating for me too. But you just have to really look at it as an investment. And if you look at um, the income and the amount of money that you can make in this career field, you just have to look at it as an investment to get started. And then finally, even if you aren't taking flying lessons yet, there's a lot of really good material out there you can start studying for now to prepare. So if you're a high school student or financially you just can't start flying yet, there's a lot of really good information out there that you can start learning now that will make that process easier when the time comes to start flying. So in conclusion, as I've said before, there are many people I've spoken with that struggle to get into aviation. There's a lot of really good information out there, but it can be a challenge for someone who doesn't have a personal connection with someone in aviation. For me personally, when I started dating my wife now, her father-in-law is a pilot, and that was kind of a big stepping stone for me, was talking to someone in the industry and kind of guiding me down the right path. So hopefully by providing this document, it will help those who don't really know anyone or have a connection in the industry to get started and to figure out what to do from there. So this is just kind of a couple of my references. Again, I used from my flight school that I went to, uh, Hartzell Propeller. They make a lot of propellers for the general aviation community, but they have some good references on their website. And then AOPA has a lot of really good training material. And this reference specifically just kind of outlines the different certificates and ratings that are required depending on what kind of career or job you want to do. So yeah, hopefully this will help others. I'm really excited for it. So thanks for watching.